Hello. It's Tuesday at 6:30, so it's time again for what we're reading. And I've got a great group with me today. I've got Angela Deckard from the Alpine branch. Hi, Angela. Wave,
Hi.
wave, wave. And I've got Jaci Cooper, who's our director of programs and projects. Did I get that right, Jaci?
Projects and planning.
Projects and planning. I knew I was going to
Jeez,
miss.
it's too much to keep up with.
So JC handles all of us librarians always have a million great ideas about how we can improve our services and what we can add and what we can change and what we can do when we get so excited about it. And we tend to want to run off in 20 different directions. So if it weren't for JC, we would. So JC is kind of organizing us and putting us on the right step. Isn't that right, JC?
Yeah, we got to harness all this good creative energy, right? But, yeah, we were chatting before and talking about what kind of projects we do, and I was like, software rollouts and process improvement. I think that's so exciting. But we have some really cool projects going on right now, like a revamp of our play space areas. We're super excited to begin to welcome people back in the branches. I know a lot of people have been staying away because of COVID and safety, but it'll be really cool to launch that project and see more kids in the library having some fun.
Yes, we can't wait to put the toys out again. I'm not sure when that's going to be, but hopefully very soon. We want, all of those, I say toys, but the kids are learning every time they pretend that they're being a banker or pretending they're being the policeman driving by or pretending. I don't have toys out, but I have a big structure in the Amy Van Andel library, and a little boy jumped on it and said, "Look, I'm on a boat." And I mean, just that kind of imaginative thinking and making a story in your head is just so fabulous. And not to mention, they get to see each other and be social here. So love it. I'm going to start tonight with Angela because you're next to me, Angela. And we could chat about libraries and how wonderful we think they are for a long time, but it's my show. So, Angela, what are you reading?
Yeah, so one book I just read recently is Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. She's kind of a big name right now. This book just came out in April, and then she just released a new album with her band Japanese Breakfast, I think like a week or two ago. So she's all over the place. And basically, Crying in H Mart is a memoir that explores her complicated relationship with her mom, and then her coping with her mom after she dies of cancer. So yeah, it was like kind of like a tough one. I was reluctant to read it, but I'm glad I did because it comes out okay in the end. Like it was really heartwarming. I won't.
But it's not the kind of book that makes you want to shoot yourself when you're done.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Yeah. So yeah, I'm actually kind of like still processing it. Like I finished it like a week and a half ago, and it really stuck with me. And basically, it kind of starts off talking about the complicated relationship she has with her mom. Michelle Zauner is Korean American. Her mother's Korean. So she doesn't have that typical Western mother-daughter relationship. Her mother is really strict and kind of hard on her. And Michelle felt like she spent most of her childhood trying to please her mom and live up to these really high expectations. And then on top of that, she's living in Eugene, Oregon, and she doesn't really fit in. She's the only Korean American kid, so she kind of like shies away from her Korean identity. And then once Michelle's in high school, she kind of snaps and starts rebelling. Like she's just kind of over it. And so she like starts staying out all night, like disobeying her mother, and her mother is just like fine. And like she runs away from home and things are really tense between them. And then things kind of start to improve. Michelle moves across the country to Philadelphia for college. And when they kind of have that distance, they kind of start to learn how to appreciate each other. Michelle kind of figures out that her mom does love her. Like she just had very unique ways of showing her love, and that was mostly through food and Korean cooking. And just when their relationship was getting good, she gets the call that her mother has stage 4 colon cancer. And so Michelle moves back to Eugene, Oregon to take care of her mom. But when she's there, she's just like, I don't know how to do this. Like, how do I connect with my mom? And she realizes that she doesn't know how to cook like the traditional Korean dishes.
She never learned?
Yeah. So
Oh,
she it really messes with her because she's like, well, what kind of Korean am I if I can't even cook these dishes for my mom to take care of her the way she took care of me when I was a kid? And she really struggles with her Korean identity. And it's an interesting inverse because she starts off just kind of suppressing this Korean identity. And then once she starts to lose her mom, she's just like, she wants to get that back. She's like, am I still Korean if the Korean part of me dies with my mom? And so, yeah,
I
it's
love the food connection. That is amazing. 'Cause
oh,
I lost my mom a few years ago, and I find myself thinking I want to eat her pasta again. She made homemade pasta sauce. She'd make a pot, almost every Sunday. She'd start it in the morning and it'd be simmering all day, and we'd have a big pot of pasta. And she'd make a ton of meatballs in there, and then we'd eat it, for the rest of the week. You'd have leftover meatballs and spaghetti just all week. And I don't know how she did it. I've tried several times. It does not taste like hers at all.
yeah.
Food is just so central to identity. Like I think, so I gave up meat for like 10 years, and my number one family recipes coming from the UP were like venison, and so I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like suppressing some of my identity here. But it's been like, and after reintroducing that into my diet, like my grandpa passed away. And so I was like, oh, like how special would it have been to like been able to like make a meat pie with him? Like some of those like traditional family recipes, but it truly is like your identity. It's like that we like show each other like love in our families as well.
Absolutely. And it's just like, and it's when somebody you love makes these dishes for you, it has a special kind of magic to it that like you'll never be able to replicate that taste because it's just like you can't replicate what they do, or I don't know. It's just it's just a really special thing. Yeah.
Well, I love that. That sounds great. I'm going to go. Okay, I'm going to move it over to Jaci now because I know she's itching to tell us about a book. What are you talking about first, Jaci?
Yeah, well, I'm excited because Angela's book was on my list, and I've seen it on a lot of people that I like follow and respect on Goodreads. So I got to bump that up now since it's about identity and food and all of that stuff. But Penni, the timing has been serendipitous for you to have me on the show because I knew the genres I read the most are literary fiction, essays, short stories, and poetry. So I was like, I gotta share a poetry collection, and I knew I wanted to share a collection by Natalie Diaz. She has two, When My Brother Was an Aztec, and then Post-Colonial Love Poem. And serendipitously, Post-Colonial Love Poem was just awarded Pulitzer. Let's have a conversation about how that's pronounced because I don't know.
Yeah. Before the show, we discussed for 5 minutes whether it was Pulitzer or Pulitzer, and we asked Miss Google, who said Pulitzer.
And I've heard it both ways. I was like, oh my gosh, we got to figure this out before I say it wrong. See who's going to challenge me here. But these were announced on Friday, actually. And so she won the poetry category. And I really, really love her poems because she balances so many things that would be, I guess, opposites. So she balances like the sardonic tone of playfulness. She balances like highbrow and lowbrow. She balances like the past and the present. She puts these things that would kind of be at odds with each other and like finds harmony for them. And I just find myself in constant awe at her ability to also show like the interconnectedness and poetic and sacred nature of everything from like pop music to environmentalism to basketball. So she has this really broad range, and you're like, how do you do that? How do you like find these beautiful words for basketball? I don't even like basketball, but now I do, I guess. But the language she uses is just like so lush, and especially in this collection, it's like rich with like gems and geology and bodies of both like flesh and of water. And they're just really accessible poems. So it's not a poem that you're like, I don't know this. I don't understand it. I don't get poetry. Some of her language is like, I guess, kind of unique and maybe even sometimes challenging to people. But at the end of reading it, you're like, I understood that. Or if I don't, it kind of evoked something in me. But you're probably wondering like what a lot of the poems are about then, other than basketball and pop music. But I think like her most salient theme is the erasure of Native American history in our country, and kind of the blood that was shed to create this mirage of the American dream. Not to get too political, but I mean, it's an important topic and it's something that we don't really talk about a lot, unfortunately. But some of my favorites from this collection are Post-Colonial Love Poem, which is the title. They Don't Love You Like I Love You, which is kind of a riff off of a Yeah 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 song that I love. And she actually cites that in the poem as well. Skin Light, American Arithmetic, and The First Water is the Body. I mean, I could go on. I hardly ever find a collection where I'm like, wow, most of these poems are really interesting. Like once in a while I'll get one that you're like, oh, this is really good. And the next one's like, that didn't really take me anywhere. So if you're kind of looking into contemporary poetry, or poetry that isn't like, oh, thou Shakespearean, like it's like outdated, like these things we would learn in like 8th grade, which are important, like they have their place too, right? But if you're looking for a really good take on contemporary poetry, I would definitely recommend Natalie Diaz and her
What I
collections.
love about poetry is that a word is not just its meaning, but it's also its sound and its shape. So do you have, I'm putting you on the spot, Jaci, because I didn't ask you, but do you have like a line or a sentence or a stanza that you could share that just displays that so that you can tell that this is not a piece of prose? This one sentence reads like poetry. To make my point.
So
I'm still putting you on the spot.
I'm going to read just a couple of different stanzas from They Don't Love You Like I Love You, just because I can't help myself, and I'll just give you more than what you asked for it. It's funny, I took a fiction class and I'm very much poetic minded. And I was like, I actually don't really like always care what the story's about. I care more about like how it's delivered. Because there's like different types of readers, right? Like I could read the most boring story in the world if it's beautifully written. But there are some people who don't really care about that. They want the story. They want something that's interesting. But yeah, so that's sound and like the lyrical nature of writing that's always so like appealing to me. But anyway, there is 2 stanzas here, and then I'll go to the other page. It's I'll say, I'll say, what is the United States if not a clot of clouds, if not spilled milk or blood, if not the place we once were in the millions? America is maps. So I really like those like hard C sounds like all together.
I love clot of clouds.
Yes, yeah, me too.
Yeah, and then on the back of that, like further down in the poem, all this time I thought my mother said wait, as in give them a little more time to know your worth, when she really said wait, meaning heft, preparing me for the yoke of myself, the beast of my country's burdens, which is less worse than my country's plow. So that's some heavy stuff, but
literally heavy stuff. I mean, did you mean that?
And you know, it's so interesting to like see these perspectives that are often just so underrepresented, and have them like these really grim and really tough topics like talked about in a really beautiful way. Yeah, that was one that I really liked from that collection.
Love that.
Love it. I'm going to transition from Jaci's here a minute, just because it's such a good opening for my book that I'm just finished, called The Firekeepers Daughter. And it's by Angeline Booley. Because it is about an Ojibwa woman, a young woman, just finishing high school. And it's written by a Michigan native who grew up in the UP. So it fits all into that. Yes. But she is light skinned and her mother is white. and she's not a part of the tribe yet. There's a lot you have to go through to get initiated into the tribe in her situation, because her mother's family refused to allow her father's name on her birth certificate because they were completely racist against Native Americans, or they would say those Indians. You know what I mean? It's just rampant. And the way they talk in the book about what was happening in her grandparents' day, her parents' day, and what still happened, which is the difference between when an Indian kid tries to come through the border from Canada to the United States, as opposed to when a white kid comes, and how much you need and what you have to do and what they search, and things that I wouldn't have thought of. So it was really an eye opener. But this story takes place when the young woman is going through a terrible time in her life. She's lost a lot of people in her life. Her uncle recently died, and her best friend dies in the book. And a lot of it is associated with meth coming to her community.
Yeah.
So people making it, people selling it, and it's kind of mixed up with the particular meth that they're dealing in this story is paired with a Native American mushroom used for other things. So you've got an entire other aspect too, and they talk about some of the healings they go through, and she's really torn where to take all of this, because she's angry about all the deaths and she's angry about what's happening, but she doesn't really trust the FBI who are coming to investigate. And so it's a very tangled, yes, so many things going on. I love the cover. You can kind of tell.
Will you share the cover again? I'm a sucker for a beautiful cover, and that one I
Beautiful.
love. Penny, where is that? Where does that take place in the UP? Do you know which area?
Jaci grew up in the UP, so she would know, but I believe.
I'm like, do I know them?
You might. I'm about to go visit. Where am I going? The near Escanaba, and I know that she mentions Escanaba.
Oh, that's my hometown. So.
But then they also go. Where's the Canadian border there? Because it feels like that's
St. Marie.
Okay. Yes, the Sioux. They talk about the Sioux all the time.
Okay.
And the Sioux locks, and yeah.
Gosh,
and
what am I?
They're on a hockey team.
This is just all very familiar. What am I gonna? How am I gonna prioritize your book over Angela's book now? I want to read both.
Mine was a teen book, and I read it partly because I don't read a lot of teen books, and
I don't
I'd like to have one to offer teens who come in the library. And I really love. I don't think it's necessarily a teen book. It was very good for me, an adult, and I really enjoyed it on a lot of different levels, which is something I love about a book too. I don't want it to be single faceted.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued. I'm gonna put that on hold.
Okay, your turn, Angela. You're up. You're ready.
All right. So the next book that I read is The Great Believers by Rebecca Mackay. It's a part of KDL's core collection. So all of you have this book. It's amazing. My book club at the Alpine branch. This is the last book we read for book club, and it probably inspired the best conversation, mostly because it tore us apart. I had a major emotional hangover from this book. It was really hard to recover from it. And it was a National Book Award finalist, and the New York Times Book Review rated it as one of the top 10 best books of 2018. So it's a really good one. But basically, it tells two intertwining stories. The first thread of the story is the story of Yale Tishman, and it takes place in 1980 Chicago during the AIDS epidemic, when AIDS was still really misunderstood and not correctly treated. And Yale's a gay man, and he works for an art gallery. And just as his career is starting to take off, the AIDS crisis starts to really ramp up and loom large over Chicago. And one by one, he watches as it kills off his close-knit circle of friends until it hits a little too close to home. I won't go further. And then the second thread of the story is the story of Fiona. It takes place in 2015, and she is actually the sister of one of Yale's closest friends, and kind of like the mother hen of that 1980s friends group. And she's traveling to Paris to try to find her daughter, who disappeared into a fundamentalist cult. And then eventually the two stories collide, and it is amazing. Don't read the end in public. I'm not a crier, but I was loud crying. like the last like 20 pages of the book. My neighbors probably were really concerned. Like I couldn't hold it in. And then I bought the book for my mom for Mother's Day. I was like, Happy Mother's Day, prepare to be torn apart. But it is just, it's one of like the most like shattering, amazing books I've read in a very long time. So definitely check it out. All the branches have it. So if you want to like have your heart broken, it's easy to find.
I secretly love like books and songs that just like shatter me, and I'm like, why do, like, am I like desperate to feel human? Like sometimes I really want to just listen to like depressing music today, or like, every documentary like, or every movie you watch is like quiet, like somebody like crying, like looking out the window, there's like no sound, and I'm like, every movie you watch is like a car chase. So I'm also a sucker for cults, like reading about cults. So
yeah,
so many different levels too.
This book had like everything in it.
I was surprised to hear about a fundamentalist cult in Paris. I don't really equate those two.
Well, it actually, the cult wasn't in Paris. It was in the United States,
Okay.
kind of like on the West Coast. And then Fiona's daughter, Claire, fled the cult and like disappeared in Paris. So sorry, I wasn't clear about that. But yeah, but Fiona hadn't seen her daughter in years.
I'm going to join the cult in Paris. That's
yeah, me too. Like, don't find me. Leave me alone.
Oh, now, speaking of great places to go, Jaci took a trip somewhere and has also read about it.
Yeah, and actually now thinking about that, I probably should read your book next because I'm going back home soon. So maybe I should read about that. So I'm in the habit of, I love to travel. And when I travel, there's a quote, like, a reader lives 1,000 lives. And I'm desperate to live those 1,000 lives. So I'm like, not only am I going to read about it, I'm going to visit there and I'm going to learn everything about this while I'm here. So when a couple of people found out I was going to Savannah, they recommended this book to me, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. And so I started reading it on my phone and on my tablet on the way there. And then I found the cutest, coziest little bookstore there with cats and nooks and crannies. And I was like, I gotta buy this book there. So I bought it, and I actually brought up this book because I am actively, as you can see, reading it right now. I didn't quite finish it when I was there because I got a little distracted doing that. But I also wanted to bring this one up because I think it really shows the power and the legacy of a book, and the potential a book can have. So this is not a new book. This has been, I think this was published in 1994, and it's a national bestseller, and I think it has the longest standing like status as the bestseller.
Wow.
Or one of them. It did at one point. But anyway, it was published in 1994, and tourism in Savannah in 1993, I think they got like 5 million visitors in 1993. And then just 2 years later, tourism went up 46%.
Wow.
From the publication of a book. Like, how cool is that? So now, 20 years later, the number of visitors jumped from like $12.5 million, and they spend $2.2 billion their year. Like, the tourism industry is just booming there. And I thought, because of a book, like, that is the power of books. That is so cool. And personally, it's just inspiring. I'm like, maybe I'll just like write a book about how beautiful UP is. And then I think probably everybody living there will hate me because it's like the best kept secret. And they're like, no, don't tell everyone.
Don't ruin it. No.
But I thought, wow, that is just such a cool legacy. But anyway, you're probably wondering what the book is actually about, not like all of the fun facts.
I'm going to sound really old when I tell you that I read it in 1996 when it came out, or 94. Yeah. So, were you born yet, Jaci?
I was young, but I was alive. But yeah, I like I said, I started this kind of as I was just getting to the city, and then it's a nonfiction book, but it reads very much like a novel. And it starts out, so the basis of the book is that a man Jim Williams, who is a very prominent part of the Savannah Historical Society and a person who was largely responsible for restoring a lot of the old architecture in Savannah, was accused of murder of his lover. And he admitted to murder of his lover. He said it was in self-defense. And so that's about halfway through the book where that comes out. But the whole beginning of the book is just really painting this picture of what Savannah is. Like, all of the people who live there are extremely like quirky, and like Angela said with her book, like her book had a little of everything. And don't we just love that? We just love a little something for everyone. And this has like murder and voodoo and art and architecture and paintings. And I'm just like, it has it all. Everyone will love this. Maybe that's why it's a bestseller, right? Like there's something for you. Yes, Jim Williams, he is just this prominent figure. And I think they said Savannah was like a beautiful woman with a dirty face. So they these like gorgeous, like turn of the century buildings or like 1920s architecture that was kind of like crumbling. And he helped restore a lot of that. And it's just it's very beautiful now. But it's cool to walk around a place and to see. There's actually a quote in the book. I'm going to butcher it. I think it's something like, don't be like enamored by the moonlight and the magnolias, because there's like murder and voodoo creeping under. But like these places in here are like very real. They like talk about Clary's Cafe or drugstore, and they talk about like the Mercer home, and you can actually just walk and see it, and you're like, I know. Do these people know? Did they read this book? I have all of the knowledge right now. So I was disappointed I didn't finish it. I mean, obviously, like probably I couldn't read a whole book in like a 2-hour flight, but but yeah, I'll be curious to go back after I finish it too, just to see if there was anything I didn't get to see before. But yeah, it just adds so many more like layers to an experience when you're like reading about it and like seeing it at the same time.
Yeah, it's even fun to read a fiction book that's based in the place you're going at. Especially if the author's good at their research and they know what they're talking about.
Because like whenever I go somewhere, I'm just like, this is cool, but I'm like here for a weekend or a week. Like I wonder what it's like to really live here. So like when we went to Iceland, there's a author, I think his name is S.J.O.N. Sjón. He is an Icelandic author, and so I read some of their books too, because I'm like, I'm so curious. I just want to know more.
Well, it's wonderful to talk to both of you tonight. You are so fabulous. Love all the books. Everybody hold them up one more time.
Yes.
So everybody hold up your book. Terrific. So I hope you'll come back again and come and watch next Tuesday when we have a local author who's a veteran of the Afghan wars. So that's going to be very interesting to talk to him about his experiences and his book, which he wrote on coming back. So see everybody next Tuesday on what we're reading.
Thanks for having us, Penni.